All right. So I'm Josh Fabean. I am the technical director at Code Koalas. So that just means I'm kind of been there the longest. I'm over all the developers.
Do you want to post one?
Sure. If you don't like the stuff we do, you can blame me. I sometimes update my website, so if you want to point your RSS feed catcher at that, you could. And it does have the most recent article, I believe, is like a blog post version of this talk. And then I give another talk tomorrow, and then that will also have a blog post with it that's not up yet, because I have to finish it. So cool. So a quick poll. Anyone here not use Git?
Used to use SVN a long time ago.
Yeah. Cool. Good.
Just kidding.
Good. That'd be interesting, because if you shouldn't, you should definitely use it. There's a chance. So reasons to use it, as I'm sure everyone here knows, if you have more than just yourself working on code, you don't want to be like just SFTPing files up to the server like I used to do like 8 years ago, and using like we used a plugin in the Coda editor so we could both be editing the same file at the same time. And then I'd be like, hey, can you save that file? I'm ready to see my change on the live side. So you don't want to do that. You can roll back when you push up bad stuff. You can deploy your code to multiple servers without having to manually do it. And you can find out who to blame for the things that don't work with git blame. Except it's always yourself from like 2 months ago. Every time I run it. Like, what kind of idiot wrote this? That was me. Awesome. Who thinks it's hard, though? Who uses Git and is like, oh my gosh, it's too complicated, I hate it. All right, so at least one. It can be hard. So common things that I've heard people complain about and then we complain about, sometimes it's just like, hey, command line's hard. I'd rather use like a Git GUI, which is okay. Sometimes you get weird conflicts when you have files that should be local or only on stage and not in prod, like in Drupal, like the settings.php. If you're hard coding in the values in your settings.php, well, how do you accidentally not push that to production and hose your site? Stuff like that. And I'm sure people have other things. Is there any other particular complaints? You raise your hand. So do you have a particular complaint about Git, like why it's hard?
Well, it's funny you should say that about command line, because I end up using a source tree to do certain things, and a command line to do most things, because looking at diffs is a pain.
Okay. So diffs in the command line specifically hard? Obviously, they're way nicer. That's why, like, for merge requests and stuff, you do it like in GitHub, and you can see the visual merge requests. Like, that's way better than trying to do it. Yeah. Yeah, I know, and we have also had weird times where I don't know what people have done to get here, but then they like get so frustrated and like stash or something. They're like, oh, I've lost all my code for the past day. Or we had this one time, a developer who's no longer with us, this is not why, but somehow re-changed the encoding of all the files to like UTF-16, and that just like killed the entire Git repo. Because then it was like binary stuff, and it was like everything changed. And that was after like working for like 2 days straight. And I was like, I pushed up my code. I'm ready to go to sleep now. And then we accepted his merge request, and like everything was gone. And I'm like, oh crap. That was a very long time ago. Cool. But now the issue that we run into with Git, besides like the common like, hey, things are hard and stuff, this is what drove us to like have to rethink our Git flow. So we will build sites, and then a lot of times they end up going into a retainer where we might not touch them for like 6 months besides security updates, and they're like, oh, we want this new feature or anything like that. And that's normally where we'd run into issues. So we already have an existing site, and lots of code has happened for this new feature. Then we push it to staging, but now the client's like, oh, I know that feature's almost done, but let's put that on the back burner for a minute and let's work on this other thing. And now, but that code's already in like your staging, and now you have to go off of like what the prod currently is to tack on this new feature and remove the new features you added to staging to show them, hey, here's this your current live site with this new feature, and how do you like untangle this, because the code's been in the main branch, and then how do we then only deploy one of the features in staging and not all of the features into staging? These are definitely things we have struggled with before, and it normally was just like, well, I'm just going to spend like 2 hours working on the merge request, and then I will make sure that we only push the things we're supposed to merge. And that's just terrible and painful, and no one wants to do that. So we came up with this new Git workflow, and I don't think we've 100% finalized it, and it's nothing revolutionary or anything, and we're open to changing it as we encounter new bugs. But since we've changed this, I've successfully done like hotfixes on production in like less than 30 minutes, and nothing bad has happened. I did it yesterday for a site, and it worked. It worked the way it was supposed to. It was great. So we just go off, everything happens in master, or you could use like develop branch, whatever. You just say, this is our main branch that we do everything in. And then you do feature branches off of that. Still nothing crazy. But then before merging back into master, you rebase your branch off of master. So that way, this fixes sometimes if you started your feature a week ago, let's say, and a bunch of stuff has happened in that branch, and you go to merge it in, the merge request does a fast forward, which most of the time doesn't ruin anything, but then sometimes you'll see like weird artifacts in your merge request of lines of code that it says you're adding that you didn't add and are actually already in the branch. I don't know how that happens, but it happens sometimes. If you rebase it, if you don't know what rebasing is, it essentially means you took what master currently is and then applied your changes on it as if it happened today, and then you're making the merge request. So there's like one commit, and it's just your thing. And so then we do that back into master, so the merge requests are pretty clean and small, and one merge request and one commit is one feature. It's, we added this new feature, and that's your merge request. And a lot of times on support, it like has a ticket number in it or something. Yeah?
Do you think that rebasing is better than just merging master into your feature branch?
Yes. So, because I think that's where we got into the issue with like the fast forward stuff. I don't know, have you ever seen that? Like where you go to make a merge request and then it shows, like we had it the other day on an older site where they're like, I'm making this merge request of my feature into the production code, and it's like, I edited this one file, and then this other file says I added this line, but if I go into that branch, that line's already there, but it says like in the merge request, this will fast forward at like 60 commits or something. It's just like weird stuff that I think for the most part does nothing bad, but this definitely does nothing bad. It always works, and as long as you don't rebase branches other people have, you normally don't break things, because it's just your local stuff. But then we started doing tag-based releases, which you could also do branches. There's really no difference. If you made a branch called like, hey, this is release version 1 or whatever. But we do that as tags, and then we have pipelines that build off of that and do everything. So as a developer, this is what I do. Like, this is the workflow. You check out master, re-pull it down, make sure everything's good. You git check out my new feature branch. You do all the code you're going to do, however long that takes. And then you commit. Obviously, you can do multiple commits if it's taking multiple days and push up. So if you die, someone else can pick up where you left off. But then when you're like, okay, my code's ready, I'm ready to try to get this up for people to review, you check out master again and you re-pull down master. And then you have to do that for the rebase to work, because then you go back to your branch and you rebase it. And if you do a git rebase, the branch you want to rebase off of master, and then -i that does it interactively, and it like pops up a prompt that shows you these are all the commits, and you pick the commits that you actually care about. Because for the most part, it will just be your commits, but sometimes it will be like, and some other commit, and you just say like, I don't care about that because that's not mine. That was something that updated in master that some reason it thinks that I would care about. And I think that's where you get like weird conflicts and stuff on a normal merge request. And if there are conflicts, you resolve them just like you normally would, and then you run like the git rebase continue. It tells you in the command line, hey, fix this conflict and then run this command. So you do that, and then you push it up, and then you make your merge request. And then we also squash all of our commits if it's a single feature, we squash all the commits into one thing. Like I said, so it's easier later to like cherry pick that one feature out. Like added a slider to the home page is one commit. It doesn't need to be added a slider home page. Oh wait, I forgot to add padding as another commit, and oh oops, no, for real, I fixed it this time is another commit. So you squash those all into one, and then if something's wrong with that, we can just say take this one commit and remove it, and we're good. But then you create your merge request with that. So then we can do like a live coding to kind of show what that is like. Cool. So there's this tool. It's called like git-school.github.io/visualizing-git. It is a website that shows you a Git tree. So I pre-made someone, and this is what I was thinking like is kind of a normal Git flow. So you have, at one point you started here, and if you look, master kind of went up here, and that's where we currently are. But at one point here, on the second commit, someone checked out their feature. Feature 1. And then also on that commit, or one commit later, someone checked out to create feature 2. And master kept moving along, and then someone merged feature 2 back into master. And now feature 1 is back on commit 2. And like since then, there's been like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more commits. Plus feature 1 has had 5 commits. And now we're like, hey, let's merge feature 1 into master again. And in this example on here, it's definitely going to work because there's no actual code. So we go git merge feature 1, and it's going to magically be like, hey, look it, we merged it. But in real life, we know there's probably going to be some conflicts on that because you'll have a feature that's been stale for weeks, maybe. And now you're like, hey, I want to just merge this in, and the project's moved along so long that you're going to have to do some stuff to catch up your code. And so that's what we would run into a lot. And like I was saying, for our projects that did extended periods of maintenance, so like we have sites that are like 5, 6 years old that we are still actively maintaining. And in our previous way, before we did Docker auto deploy based on tags and all that, we were dumb and we created a branch for each environment. So like that's great. If you ever want something in production, you just put it in the production branch. And that worked great until you didn't touch the site for 6 months. And then you're like, hey, I want to pull some changes from the staging site into production, so I'll just try to make a merge from the staging to production because it just has this one feature. And you're like, but there's like 1,000 things that have changed. What the heck happened? How did these branches that have all the same exact code, how are they so far apart? And I have no idea. I would just be like, no one's touched staging in 6 months. Let's just delete it and rebase it off production. No one will know.
Because merge commits are terrible.
Yes. So we'd run into issues, and this is kind of like it probably works, but it wasn't the cleanest. So now I can do reset, I think. Nope. Start. Okay. There's a command to kill this.
Kill?
Kill. I did it at the start. I don't know.
Also, are you going to do full screen?
Yes.
You condense your to not be full screen and pull the left side in a little bit. I think it's offset.
Come on. Can you see the bottom? Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I could probably just like zoom in. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Here, we'll just do this. And there, that'll start a new one. Okay. All right, so this is your Git repo, and so you do git commit on master, git commit on master, and then at this point you're saying, I want to check out feature 1, and git commit. I did a couple commits on it, and then while that was happening, master obviously moved along too, and then okay, feature. So I'm on my feature. So now what I would do is I would run git rebase master. I highly doubt interactive is a thing here. Nope. So when you rebase it, you'll see what it does there visually is it takes your commits that were here, it rewrites history and pretends like you just applied them today on top of master. Now master's still here and my branch is still there, because we're not done yet, because then we would do get checkout master, because now at this point we would make a merge request, and so someone would go on master get merge feature 1, and now master and feature 1 are caught up, and this is a much more straight repository of like the Git tree. Instead of branching out all crazy, it stays very narrow, and things don't get too far apart. And then what we end up doing we're like, hey, we really like this. We'll do git tag v1, and now that's tag v1, and then git commit, and then we'll do like git tag v1.1. And then the great thing about tags is we release version 1.1 and something terrible has happened, and we can just say, hey, go back to v1. And it's much easier than saying, check out this ID, because you'd have to go scroll through all your history and be like, at what point did this work? And what we were doing for tags, so let me check. So what we did for tags, and I could probably pull up our pipeline. So we use GitLab, and GitLab has built-in pipelines. So does Bitbucket and other things. And people use different stuff. Oh yeah, I'm not on the VPN. I can't pull it up. I can pull it up in code. Okay, so then what we do is we run pipelines that on tag releases, they go and they rebuild the Docker container and push it up. And so we have dev, which this one actually just runs. So our dev servers just run off whatever just got merged into master. It just goes and deploys it. But then what we do for staging, so we have staging and a production, it goes only on if it says RC dash a number. And this is a dark theme. I don't know how to change it too quick, but but if it says RC dash anything, it will go and say, great, this is a release candidate, so we'll go ahead and deploy that staging. It runs all the stuff it needs to do, and then same with actual releases, they're release dash whatever. So we do release dash 1.1, 1.2, and then what that allows us to do is later, like what happened the other day was so we've had, since the release 1.0 for this project, let's say, we were still doing a bunch of things, and then they came and they're like, hey, there's an emergency, and if you're on mobile on this one page and you open multiple menu links, you can't see all of the words because it's like off by like 5 pixels. And it was an emergency and it had to be fixed right away. And you're like, great, I need to add padding to the bottom of the menu on mobile, but how do I deploy this one CSS change to the current live code and not affect everything else? And so it's easy with the tag. I just went in GitLab, said from tag, create a new branch called whatever the name of the branch, whatever the name of the tag was. I made my merge request off of master like I normally would, because I still want to not lose that. So I did the normal flow, got that merged into master. We tested it on staging, and it worked. And then I went and took that same branch and rebased it off of the previous releases tag. And then I made that merge there. And then we just re-tagged that as release 1.0 dash hotfix 1. And if we had to do it again, we do like dash hotfix 2. So now that is both in the current master, so we're not going to lose that fix, and it was done on the live code without having to, how do I redeploy master without putting in everything else that's happened since the last time we did a prod push. And so using tags made that possible for us. And previously it would have been probably just pull down the production branch, make that one change, pull down the master branch, make that one change, and then in a month when someone tries to make a new prod push, like, how come this line is now in here twice and there's conflicts? So they get tagged and then they just never get touched again. Cool. Other useful things that I have. if I can get back to wherever my cursor is. Here we go. So other useful things. So that's our Git flow. It's not too complicated. I could probably answer a bunch of questions on how we do stuff, but there's some other random Git things that we think are useful. Don't track compiled files. And if you have to, at least not the minified ones. We had a client who tracked their minified map files for like JavaScript and CSS and things. And so if you were not the last person to push your code, you couldn't make a merge request because then they accepted another thing. Well, now there's conflicts in the map files. So I'd send a merge request and like 2 days later, they're like, hey, I can't merge this. There's conflicts every time. And then you'd fix it and then they'd tell you again, hey, there's conflicts because they're tracking compiled code. So if you don't know how, you can set up your git ignore. And there is this cool tool called gitignore.io. It's a website, and you just kind of like click like, oh, I'm using a Drupal site, and we're using Composer, and we use Sass, and we use NPM, and you just say whatever you want, whatever you use, and it comes up with like, these are the standard things you probably want to ignore. But it really is just a file with, you put down like paths to, like if you could from your terminal cd to that directory, if you put that in there, it's not going to ignore it. You can do star, like star dot zip, no zip files, anything like that, and you're going to ignore. So now, this is another one I learned about not too long ago, and it blew my mind. There's git add, and you can do -p, and you can, so it does an interactive diff, and what it does is in your command line, you're in git add -p, and any tracked file, it will pop up like the individual git diff that ultimately gets added, and it'll be like, hey, in this file, line 52, you changed this from this to this. Do you want to commit that? And you could say yes to that, and then like 3 lines down later in the same file, not commit that change. So if you had to change a bunch of stupid stuff to get fake data in there, or whatever you had to do locally, but then ultimately, like, it was really just this one thing to fix it, instead of having to like revert your whole file or something, you can just commit like just that one line of the file, and then that file's still there locally. Because it was on a project that we inherited, and I don't know the file structure, it's a Laravel project, I don't know where anything is, but ultimately I fixed the problem, and it's in one of these 8 files I changed. So I was doing git diff on each file and be like, was that the file I fixed? No. And someone's like, oh, you just do git add -p. And I was like, what? This is amazing. And then there is also some plugin if you use CSH that does a similar thing on like just any kind of git add. Cool. That's it. And just remember to have a quality weekend. Everyone at our office, well, the developers in our office love when we say that. Everyone else hates it, and they're like, it's the worst thing ever. Never say that.
2 people.
Yes, I mean, it's the minority of the people.
It is.
Are there questions?
We've been into a problem, and it's probably, I just don't know enough yet, but if we've got 3 different people adding tickets and work and features, and we've got a dev environment, and we need to put them on there and look at that. Mm-hmm. And then we need to put it over on stage for QA to look at. And I think that Rebase will help concatenate changes together so it'll be easier to control. But I was talking about having a develop branch for the dev branch and then use master on stage. Is there no value to that? And
you definitely could. And I mean, a lot of people do that, end up doing like everything in develop, and then once they're like, hey, this is going to be a release or whatever, they just move it to master. And that's totally fine. The only issue we got, and it might not be a thing for everyone, is that just we have clients who then are like, oh, we don't want to do this one feature. And if it's already in your develop branch, how do you remove it but not lose it? Because you might still want it. And so that would be the only thing of, if you're going to be like, okay, we're ready for stage on these 4 things, how do you deploy those 4 things to stage and not the 5th thing? And that's where, with us keeping like each feature as its own little branch that gets merged into master, you could then just remerge those four into something and deploy it to staging if you just want to see those couple changes.
And that's kind of where we were going with it, was to not merge develop into master, but merge the feature branch into develop and then merge the feature branch.
Yeah, and if you're doing that, you probably want to rebase, because you'd have to, when you started, you have to start your feature branch off of either master or develop, and they're definitely going to be different. And so if you like started on master, merged into develop, it was good, and then back into master, that would probably work. But if you started off develop, and then ultimately when you merge that back into master, you get like every change that's happened in develop back into master on accident if you didn't rebase that.
So the way that we do it, this might just be what we're able to do is whenever a new branch is created, an entire like development environment gets spun up. It's not what the developer is working on. There's just a branch out there on our staging server, and that's that commit code that continually gets updated. And so that's what the client looks at and QA approves. The client looks at for UAT and says, yeah, this looks good. Once everyone's got sign off, that's when it gets merged back in to master. And then we know that everyone's signed off on it, so we're good. So it's because we don't have to pull it out.
Yeah, I know Pantheon has that like built in. I don't know if anyone else does, but that is something you can do. And we have that in our pipeline, not as crazy as that, but we do have like a manual deploy extra tag. Like if you just want to throw up a staging site just for this one feature. But yeah.
We just have it done through our CI. It just listens for new branches and what branch.
So how does that, I guess the only part would be like, how do you get it to generate the actual path? Like, how does it generate the domain name to send it to?
It's a subdomain. It's just a virtual host. It's on the same server. So.
And it's just the branch name dot the website or whatever? Okay. So.
How does it handle like a database? Does it
So,
spin up a new instance or?
It does. It grabs a copy of the sanitized production database and then imports that into a new database. It's all using the same database server, but it's just creating new databases for those features.
So I know we considered using Go. Was that what that project's called?
Go CI.
No,
Yeah, to do.
Well, we originally looked into Now,
Oh, now. Yep.
but Now doesn't handle files.
Yes, to do something similar to that, because it's supposed to be like a really quick, hey, spin up a site type of thing, so each branch could have its own thing. And that's where we just kind of compromised to like, hey, we'll just have this other pipeline that builds one-off sites, because at least we don't run into very often where we need multiple staging sites that are different than the normal staging site at one time.
We're doing it all through Bamboo, and Bamboo isn't doing anything special. It's just our bash script that does really most of the magic.
So,
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to do.
yeah.
It's like grab database dumping.
Mm.
Yeah. Automate myself out of my job.
That's how you get promoted.
Yeah. Your job's no longer necessary.
Take my job. Go away. Go step up.
Cool. Yes.
Is squashing your commits. What does that mean?
So we have an option like in our GitLab to squash the commits, but it you take instead of like the example I gave was like, hey, I added this new feature, and then if you're like me, you always forget at least one thing in your commit, and you have to do it again. And so instead of, hey, I have this merge request that adds this feature, and it's 5 commits, you squash them down into 1 commit. And you can do it locally on command line, or you can do git commit -- attach, because that's normally what I do is I catch it the second I go. I was like, git commit push, and I make my merge request, and I look it over, and I'm like, oh, I forgot this other file. And so locally, I just do like re-add the one file I forgot, and then do a git commit amend, and that actually rewrites that commit. But then you have to force push it up, so it's probably not great practice. You shouldn't do that. But you could squash them, so that way it's just 1 commit, and it's mostly just so it's cleaner. If it's separate features and it's 1 merge request that's 5 features and it's 5 commits, like that's fine. But if we want to revert just one thing, we don't have to revert multiple commits to do one thing.
It's a good rule. I like your work.
I think you made that rule,
Yes,
which is
I
why
did.
you ignore it.
I make everybody do it, and I usually follow it.
So, cool. Awesome. Well, guess that's it. So stop.